think there are a multitude of pathways. Choreography, arts administration, physical therapy, academic work, performance studies, dance studies. There's a whole lot of different things that a dance degree or dance training can lead you to go into the field, that maybe it's not about being on stage, but it's supporting all of that, what's going on stage, and everything else that's going on behind the scenes. Maybe it's technical work, maybe it's costume design, maybe it's music. There's a whole lot of other elements to the dance art form than just being a performer. And that's amazing, because in my day, it wasn't quite as open as that. You were a performer, and that was it. That was all you did. But now you can be a performer and you can be a company director and something else. So there's so many more opportunities that give these students such a wealth of opportunity and experience. They just need to find what they're interested in and what's right for them.
At NAFA, we have a diploma program at the moment. So it's a 3-year diploma program. So we say to the students, it prepares you for the next step, no pun intended, that they can go on to, as you said, Joanne, further studies, and they go into something that's a related industry like arts management or somatic practices, dance science, right? Many of our students do join a company. We have several that have joined Singapore Dance Theater, but also the quote-unquote major dance contemporary companies in Singapore. So that's quite successful. They do have a performing career, but others choose to be independent artists. I think that has become more and more, either because of world economics, but also perhaps by choice as well. We see more and more young people wanting to work independently or work in a collaborative situation with other like-minded artists or other disciplines, interdisciplinary. Yet others choose to join dance studios, right, as teachers, or choreographers, administrators. And here in Singapore, we have something called co-curricular activities in the schools. So that offers a lot of job opportunities for students or graduates to teach in these co-curricular activities programs. There's a lot, of these programs. And yet others are very entrepreneurial, and they do start their own businesses. We have students coming from different countries, India, where perhaps dance is not so well established, particularly Western dance is not particularly established. So we see many of them starting their own businesses. So they become artistic directors or directors of their own businesses, and also have to manage and teach and choreograph. So there's a lot out there, and I always say to students, it really is up to them, on what they would like to do. And the resources are out there to help them. And so our program just gets them to the next step, no matter what they want to do, they're going to have to show their, wherewithal, so be the best dancer you can be in the first instance, whether you're looking to become a professional dancer, or whether you'd like to pursue further studies, open your own studio, teach, be the best dancer you can be first and foremost. And we hope that in the 3 years of study with us, that at least gets them to the next step, to the next point. But there's a lot out there for them. It's up to them to explore.
There are a lot of transferable skills that you acquire as a dancer, which are highly regarded in the workforce, such as discipline, self-motivation, good communication. And we've seen a lot of dancers who possibly have decided that dance maybe was not for them, or possibly due to injury, that they've had to redirect their focus and their energy. Many of them choose other creative skills. Many of the students we've had have gone into fields like architecture, which are no less creative in terms of utilizing one's imagination and the other areas that's often surprised me, 10 of our graduates are now working in the field of physiotherapy. And so in some ways, it's partly through their own journey, possibly they themselves have had injuries or appreciated the relationship they've had with the physiotherapist whilst they were dancing, and decided that they also wanted to pass on that knowledge to others. And of course, it helps the dance industry because it gives back to the next generation. We've had,
students at Elmhurst who, for one reason or another, usually through long-term injury, that their first initial desire to become a professional dancer hasn't materialized, but they've learned transferable skills along the way. For example, we had one boy who had a real keen interest in lighting technician work. So we would give him that opportunity. We would support this, what was perceived as a hobby back then. But by the end, he was actually doing the stage management and the lighting tech for a David Bintley ballet that he choreographed for the school. As a result, he went on to work for, great companies. And he's absolutely, he's delighted at the way that his career has gone. So we don't look at that as a failure. We support that as a success. And that's one of our strap lines, is nurturing individuality. So we will obviously look at the strengths of each individual student and try and nurture, cultivate, and then direct them on the correct path, what is right for them as a student. I think it's really important. Instinctively, dancers have all of those incredible skills that are admired by employers the world over.
I think it depends on the trajectory you see for your own career. I mean, for my career, I sacrificed my education in order to be dancing professionally by the time I was 18 years old. Then when I retired from dance, then I went to university and undertook 2 postgraduate degrees. That was the time, in order to do that, was to consolidate that practical experience with the theoretical underpinning. But I chose primarily to focus on a performance career in the first instance.
There's more scope for dancers to be able to study, firstly study and still dance, so that they can look at something that they might be interested in. It can be physiotherapy, it can be in management, it can be so many different things. And we see this actually, we see it in the Australian Ballet, where the dancers are able to take up some other education while they're still professional. And then when they're ready to retire, they've got something else that they can actually go to, which is, it was not always that. I think we're very lucky that nowadays you're able to do this. There's a lot more scope for that. And it is something that you have to take on yourself. No one else can do it for you. And there are those dancers that possibly don't want or know what they might want to do after they've finished their career. And there are now career opportunities for them to go and speak to people. Companies, I think, are very supportive of that as well. So that if a dancer would say, look into where I might be able to go at the end of my career, it doesn't mean that that's the end of your career now because you're saying, I want to do something else. Whereas I think days gone by, it wasn't as understood as it is now. So I think there's much more scope for not only professionals, but even students. Because how many times you have a student who's gone through an entire course, it could be an 8-year course, and they come to the end, they've completed it, but they themselves decide that maybe it's not for them, and they may need to go somewhere else. But what they've learnt over those years, the discipline and the skills of being able to self-manage, they can go out and they can do other things. So now is a great time, I think, for young dancers. There's a lot more out there than there previously was.
I attended the Dancers Career Development. I think that is an organization that helps dancers transition to another career after a performing career. And I went to that about 3 years ago. And I never forgot that they had a talk. They asked one of the ex-dancers to talk, and she actually was a friend of mine. Started with a ballet career, went on to a contemporary dancer, a really, really good career. I'm probably 33 at that time, at that age went into a medical degree to be a doctor and to be a surgeon. And I actually asked her and I said, I mean, medicine, I mean, the arts. And she went, you know what? It's really not that different. She says, working under pressure, been there, done that. Yeah. She goes, that's the reason why it's called operating theater. It's a personal experience. I just did an MA 2 years ago, and they asked me they interviewed me before a panel, the university panel. And I just made a point about, during my lunchtime, I was, doing some more research and everything. And they say, you mean you did all your work in between, lunchtime between classes? I said, yeah, because that was the only time I have. I mean, dancers have that kind of training. We have that discipline. So after a performing career, a lot of dancers nowadays go back to university and do, and a lot of dancers can and do well, And because of our training, our discipline, we know how to manage time. We know how to retain knowledge. We're kind of not afraid to work under pressure. So there's a whole lot of pathway that a professional dancer after dancing can go into.
And I would add attention to detail and problem solving.
Yeah.
Working as a team as well. I mean, you said it all, Raymond. The transferable skills that the dance world actually gives to people in our field, I think it's just so undervalued by the dancers themselves. I don't think they recognize the transferable skills that this profession is given. And that, I mean, I did a degree on this about, the identity of having a long, prosperous career on the stage, and then all of a sudden, you get to a certain age, you can't dance forever, and it does feel like you're coming to the edge of the cliff. So I think the secret is really trying to prepare them and sort of allowing the dancers to recognize what skills they have. I think it's just introducing those alternatives along the way so that there isn't that fear that all they can do is dance and that is all they're good for.
Nowadays, again, universities are so open, and then coming back to maybe dance studies, the institutions, you can actually do a degree after your performing career. I mean, I did mine 2 years ago. I've never even done a BA, so it was my first foray into academia. But now the institutions are very supportive of it. And also, again, you realize what your training as a dancer really prepares you for that. I think Birmingham Royal Ballet is really good about it. They really, really support the dancers while in the company to seek. Yeah, and the world is much more open now. And I think for the parents who have that worry, they don't have to.
Yeah, I think there's much more mentoring as well these days. I mean, dancers' career development has always been such a fabulous resource. When I took advantage of it, it was, we're talking, 2006, 2007 at the time. So it was a long time ago. And it was great that you had that financial resource. But I remember back then, I didn't have the emotional support and maybe that kind of open forum to discuss what it is that I would like to transition to. Because all I knew was the performing career that I had. And I think nowadays there is just much more awareness and much more support in correctly identifying and directing dancers into where the pathways that they could perceivably take. I think there's just much more support these days, and it's discussed more and supported by the directors of the companies as well. Whereas I think, and I'm sure Raymond and Tommy, you may agree, back in the day, if you did have ideas outside of the dance world, it was almost looked down upon by the directors because they wanted you to be in the studio and nowhere else. That's where they wanted your focus to be. Whereas I think nowadays, there's just much more awareness and more focus on the human being rather than just the sausage factory line of swans. It's like Raymond said, you can have your cake and eat it. You can enjoy a wonderful performing career and do academia on the side. I mean, you'll know from a performance experience, there's lots of downtime, in between the matinees and the evening performances. I learned to be a commercial pilot in my free time. It can be done. I think it's just it's time management, it's discipline, it's all those qualities that Raymond said.
We do.
we have our final end of year performance, but we also have what is called Showcase, and that's in September and October. That's when it should be this year, but with theatres closed, it's probably not happening. But those are the opportunities where those directors from the different states will come. We've even had directors, just as they're passing through for other reasons, have come and watched class. All of those things happen, but like right now, it just can't happen, unfortunately. It's just not going to be feasible. But having said that, these young dancers won't be left out in the cold. So if they want to come back, and they can continue to keep up their training until there's such a time that they can go overseas, we're certainly, like most schools, you don't just go at the end of the day, well, we've done our bit, you can go and fend for yourself. It's just not what schools do. In our day, let me say, when I was in the Australian Ballet School in the 70s, that end of the year, that was it. If you had a contract, you had a contract. If you didn't, well, it was bye, and you might need to go and look for yourself. And there was none of this extra help. So these students, they are given as much as they possibly can.
So we've trained them up, they get to their graduating year, and we've actually called it Elmhurst Ballet Company now. So in that third and final year, it's trying to, I suppose, bridge the gap between students and education to professional life. So throughout that whole year, they have a bespoke sort of timetable. So that it would involve obviously all of their classical ballet work, all of what we discussed in terms of the contemporary, the jazz, all of the supporting dance styles, the pas de deux, the solos, the repertoire, which is very much aligned with Birmingham Royal Ballet repertoire, obviously being the associate school. But more than this, it's things like introducing industry leaders and choreographers to come and work hands-on. We also have an association with Studio Wayne McGregor, and so they will learn that kind of repertoire. They were very fortunate a couple of years ago to actually have hands-on tuition by Wayne McGregor. We will bring in industry leaders from the world of dance, people like Dame Monica Mason, Sir David Bintley, Sir Peter Wright, and actually having that real-world hands-on tuition is so valuable in terms of learning their professional craft. Also, they're given a mentor. So when it comes to audition times and they're starting to research companies, which they will do in their professional dance studies sessions, they will have an individual mentor who can really talk through what their strengths are, what kind of company would suit them. So they're not doing it alone. So they're getting lots and lots of support. And then, of course, yes, they have their own performance. The Elmhurst Ballet Company, they have a couple of performances in Birmingham. And then we also tour them to London, and they'll perform at the Sadler's Wells Theatre at the Lillian Bayliss. And again, we will be inviting directors. We will help them craft emails. We will help them communicate. We will have like a little debrief following their auditions, what they learn about them. We give them mock auditions at Birmingham Royal Ballet. So they will have, again, real world feedback from some of the industry professionals, give them some pointers, what they need to be working on, even down to things like body language, which is so important. And I think in this day and age, some of the young people, in terms of their communicative skills, they could be improved. And I blame technology, and I make no apologies for it. I think that there's a lot of swiping, and I think that there's no use of eyebrows anymore. When you explain and you articulate and you talk, you need to use your facial expression. And I think this is becoming a lost art form. And I think people react to it. When you are looking positive in a studio, when you're working with a choreographer, they say, is it 90% of all communication is non-verbal? It's all through body language. And this is a really important area, which I'm really striving to get through to the students. It's just how they communicate in a non-institutionalized way, how they communicate with directors, choreographers, and just to exude that kind of intelligence and maturity and everything that we've just been speaking about. But it's how you communicate that and have those skills recognized by a director. You need, I think, what's very telling was the year that David Bintley came to create a piece for the school, for Elmhurst. He worked with the graduating students. That year, he took 3 of them into the company. And they weren't possibly necessarily maybe the best technicians, or if it was in a big audition, he may not have noticed them. But by working with them, getting to know how they move, how they react, how they respond to direction, how the musicality, how they exude, the body language, the use of their own movement vocabulary is so important. And that's why I think it's really important for them to have that opportunity to work with the industry leaders themselves. So that's what we really try and hone in that third and final year of our sixth form, is to try and really prepare them for the industry and the demands and the rigors of that.
We guide them in their career path in several different ways. And one of the most important is a course they take in their junior and senior year called Professional Seminar. And it's about audition techniques, about resume building, about their video reel, about grant writing. They get mentored by faculty members to think about which company they would be most suited for. Maybe it's not their dream company, but maybe, oh, well, we saw you develop this way for 4 years. Think about going to this company. This may be your ideal spot. Now, we don't send them there. It's their choice, but we kind of guide them to what we think is the best place for them to go. And like Robert said, having the students interact with industry professionals is the best way to get a job. So I bring in at least 15 guest choreographers a year. And in the fall semester, it's the emerging choreographers, young emerging choreographers, usually in New York. They have small companies. And then in the spring, I bring in like the A-list people like Azure Barton and Mark Morris and Dwight Roden and Doug Verone, people like that. And the experience that students get working with those choreographers and those artists is invaluable. Because like Robert said, they're in the studio with that choreographer for 4 or 5 hours a day for 2 weeks. They get to know each other. And even if, like Robert said, they weren't the best technicians, maybe they are the best artists. Or maybe they're the best fit for that person's company. So a lot of our graduates get jobs from this one-on-one connection with the guest artists that we bring in. I also have a program where if you're a rising senior at the school and you get a professional job, that professional job takes the place of your senior year. So you'll register for a course called Professional Transition, and you can spend your entire senior year working professionally and still get your degree. And this past year, we had one join Netherlands Dance Theater 2 and Hubbard Street Dance Chicago. And they spent their entire year dancing with those companies, and they still graduated a couple of weeks ago. So there's some of the things that we do at the conservatory. Each student gets a mentor, a faculty mentor, from the day they enter as a freshman that follows them through all 4 years, both focusing on their college experience, but also guiding them to what their career might be. And an example of 2 spectacular dancers we had maybe 5, 6 years ago. They were beautiful dancers. They danced, they graduated, they danced professionally. Then they went back to physical therapy school, and they are now full-time physical therapists, both of them at the conservatory for the dance division. So to have a physical therapist that was a dancer out of that same program is an amazing opportunity and valuable for the current students that we have. So that's some of the things that we do at the conservatory.
Because the choreography department in the school is very strong, or we encourage you to kind of pursue either you want a performing career or a slightly choreographic career, independent that way. So right from first year, but more to the second year, you're allowed, if you want to be more creative rather than performing, you're allowed to be making works, and then presenting works. And like Robert and Tommy, the students are constantly working with the choreographers, people of the business in the industry. And because it's a contemporary dance school and it's much wider, we sometimes get people not just dance based, but they could be filmmaking based. So their forte might be making dance on film. So they will use the students to make a film You know, we have a program that after the 3 years, they can be an apprentice. They get the audition, and they've got about, I think, about 6, 7 companies that would have a program with the school to take them as an apprentice, where they can spend a year working with the company, leading them onto an MA in performance. So they get a master's degree after working with a company for a year. I think nowadays it's so wonderful this way. We again always look at the individual, and in the plays, the London Contemporary Dance School, we're very much about that, right from the way we audition you. Yeah, for us, it's not so much what you have, or rather your experience, but what we can help you to be, what we see that you want to go, what we can help you to go, you know, in your path. So it could be a performing career and going to Rambert. One of the 2 dancers are now at Rambert. One of them actually, just like Tommy, actually graduated from the school, went and did a sports science degree, and now he's one of the physiotherapists in the school. And quite a lot of choreographers. The school produces quite a lot of choreographers. I mean, yeah, some of them actually quite out there as well.
Well, I mean, as Joanne says, we can assist them as much as possible. And we do have, as we said, the end of year showcases, guest artists that come in that have their own companies, you know, so we try to invite people to do master classes to see our quote unquote talent that we have. But we have something called industrial attachment in place, and all students can either take this, you know, it is an option, but most students do this option. And basically it's a wish list of, if you were to, what 3 companies would you like to be attached to for the semester to gain an insight as how professional companies work, what it means to be a professional. So kind of like it's a real life or authentic experience. Now, although the objective is not to place them in the company, right? It often leads to employment with the company, because the company gets to see and gets to know the student and vice versa, right? We try to give them at least one of the 3 of their selections, right? Because we also leave it up to the companies and how they would like to select students to do their industrial attachment or internship with them. Some companies would like to audition the students, others would like an interview. Still others would like them to even write a statement as to why, you know, why would you like to be our company? Others say, just give us no, up to 3. Give us 3, you know, we trust you, or, you know, just give us 3 students to come with us, to be with us. So we leave it up to the companies to set their parameters for selection. But this is the opportunity, is to at least get them out there into the industry. And as I said, it often leads to employment. And then, as John was saying, we do try to equip them with the skills or the things that they will need to get out there, such as writing CVs. We give them mock audition classes and mock interview classes, and, you know, things like it's to help to prepare them to get out there. So while we cannot actually match make, right, with the industry, and we're certainly not attached to professional companies or affiliated that way, you know, this is what we have in place. So it's industrial attachments, and then just preparation kind of modules.